Welcome everyone to the VistaView Lessons Learned meeting, moving SAP Business One and SAP ByDesign to Cloud ERP. So thanks for joining us today. I hope you get a lot of value out of the meetings today. And you're going to be hearing a little bit about the trials and tribulations of the S4 Public Cloud, or Cloud ERP as it is now called, migrations from the lens of a partner. So let me introduce myself. I'm William Hauth. I go by Will. I'm the head of Cloud ERP Migrations here at VistaView Solutions. So I've been working with ERP systems for close to 14 years now. The majority of my background is in wholesale distribution and manufacturing. I've spent a significant amount of time working with the SAP Business One product, as well as the S4 Public Cloud or Cloud ERP product over the last few years. And I've really been specializing in the migration path, meaning anyone coming from a Business One system or a ByDesign system over to Cloud ERP. I'm also the co-chair of the SAP Business One BPAC group, which is the Partner Advisory Council, and I'm a sitting member of the SAP Cloud Factory Migration Council. I have today here with me my special guest, my counterpart, Nikhil Singh at VistaView, also a very experienced ERP veteran. So I'll let Nikhil give you a little background on himself.
Yeah, thanks, Will. Morning, everyone. My name's Nikhil Singh. I'm the head of our Cloud ERP Public team here at VistaView, as well as our Business ByDesign team here at VistaView. So my background has been over the last 10 years primarily focused on Cloud ERP deployments, whether that's S4 or in this case ByDesign. So, a wealth of experience, I think over a dozen and a half implementations end to end, as well as, primarily focusing in our discrete manufacturing customer base. So yeah, that's my experience. Hoping to share some of my feedback and my learnings throughout these journeys of helping Will and team migrate customers from Business One and ByDesign into Cloud ERP.
All right, thank you, Nikhil. So let's jump right into it. The migration framework. So SAP has a very distinct migration framework that they use for these implementations. It is called the SAP Cloud ERP Activate methodology. So what this is 6 phases of an implementation, all of which have kind of distinct tasks that are executed within each phase. It is a great framework to follow. However, through implementation, you will find there's ways to manage and mitigate risks within all of these phases. So what we're going to discuss today is each various phase and what Nikhil and I have seen through our implementations using this methodology, and where we see points in the implementation that we've maybe manipulated something or been able to just work with the customer to kind of simplify the migration path. So phase 1 of this would be discover. So discover is something that we feel pretty strongly about as an organization, right? So we commit pretty heavily to discovery at VistaView because we find it's highly beneficial for our organization as well as yourselves as the customer to have an on-site discovery. We have done them remote, but we prefer to have it on-site. And we bring in SAP. They'll support us very often with various demos or solution advisors to speak to some different types of applications that they have that might fit your business. But it's really where the project starts, right? It's where we begin to build the business value case, where we get to look at your current state and say, hey, is this a good fit for you? Would you be looking at public cloud? Would you maybe be looking at private cloud? What do your internal processes look like from a complexity level, right? What are the differences between your current system being B1 or ByDesign and your future system? And how can we start to develop, various strategies to get you from point A to point B most efficiently? And make sure, most importantly, make sure it's non-disruptive to your business, right? I think as we go through these ERP implementations, that's the key piece, right? We want this to be as smooth as possible to make sure it does not disrupt your business. So some of the lessons learned, that we've encountered in discovery, I would say one of the largest ones that struck me recently was It's a customer that we migrated about a year ago. So this customer came to us. They were a wholesale distributor and discrete manufacturer in the Northeast, multi-entity, and they had been seeing all the SAP media, whether through LinkedIn or ourselves or wherever else, right? So they were interested in a true cloud product. They were coming off of Business One, and they started reaching out to other VARs, for other ERPs as well, just to get a gauge on the market and what this cloud ERP environment looks like. So they reached out to us and they told us, "Hey, we're getting estimates turned around, some within a week." We had one estimate we got over the phone from a VAR just on a ROM. To me that says, okay, I don't think these partners know anything about your business, so it's a little risky. Let's do a discovery, right? We would love to come on site and look at your business as it exists outside of what we know, right? This customer was with us for many years. So we do know quite a bit about the current state of their processes. I mean, we implemented their original system. The customer declined, and they kind of said, well, we have an internal timeline we need to meet, right? Our board needs to approve this transition, so we're looking to really meet that timeline. Could you match the time frame of submitting this estimate that our other VARs are? So we said, okay. We went down that path, submitted that estimate. We ultimately, won the deal, and we went through and we did the migration. Very early on, almost immediately in the project, first thing we see is in scope MRP. Okay, let's go to your Business One system and see, what are you doing in your MRP? Okay, well, we're not using MRP in our Business One system. Our MRP sits with so and so. So we meet with so and so, who had been, someone I had worked with personally for many years in the past. And they said, "Oh yeah, I run all the MRP. I've been doing it for 13 years off the side of my desk in this spreadsheet that I have about 15, 20 different pages and a vast amount of formulas. And this is something that I cannot change, right? This is an integral part of our business, and I cannot change this. And I'm resistant. She was a little resistant to seeing what the new system had to offer. Ultimately, we got everything she was doing into the new ERP, into public cloud. However, it was, an increased timeline. It did increase project scope. It put us into a situation where now we had to sit down over the course of weeks, as MRP is inherently complex, over the course of weeks to now engineer what she was doing into the new system. Had we gone through the discovery, we would have known that right up front. The way we work these discoveries and the reason they're so beneficial to our customers is we bring the SMEs in from your business, right? So we make sure that we have people who are able to speak their language, understand what they're going through, and start to document the kind of issues that they might see, or anything that lives outside of the system, or any type of integration that you might want that you've delayed in the past that we can easily complete with public cloud, because there are many native integration options, right? So that's really why we look at discovery as such a critical piece. So the lessons learned that I would say is discovery is critical to implementation success. If you have the opportunity to complete one, do so. The next phase we have in the Activate methodology is the prepare phase. So prepare also critical to project success. And I say that more so for the customer, for you yourself, right? Many of the tasks that are listed within prepare are tasks that you would execute as the customer. So it's setting up internal project governance. It's starting to bring your users in and have them understand what this new system is going to look like, what the fit to standard strategy is, right? Because you're really adopting the system and positioning yourself to change internal processes to fit the system, versus the reverse, where what we have seen with many customers in the past, or generally the systems of the past, are the systems were heavily modified. S4 or Cloud ERP, as it's called, has over 600 fit to standard processes. So far, far more than ByDesign or Business One. So you don't have the need to customize everything, and you don't want to customize everything. But prepare is, another critically important piece. And some of the lessons learned that I've seen through this prepare phase, and I'll speak to kind of one of the largest pieces that I see hold up or delay implementation timelines. It's data. So we always go through and we look to map scope, right? See, point A to point B, what you're doing in your system as far as scope, right? You're using sales orders, you're drop shipping, you're doing you're creating purchase requisitions and that sort of thing. But what we really see delay implementations, it's the data, right? It's data extraction, transformation, and loading, ETL, as they call it. So what we've done in the past is we've often said data is at the ownership of the customer, right? So many customers I've seen, especially in the mid-market, you might not have that technical resource to go extract the data yourselves and manipulate and massage it. So what happens is, you might have another third party who's extracting data from your legacy system. They were manipulating that data. It was time consuming. You had to manage another party within the project. It may have caused delays, that sort of thing. And if it's corrupt, they say bad data in, bad data out, right? So if it's corrupt data or it's inconsistent, you're not going to have the same result in your future system. What we've done is we've started to form a data migration process via heavy usage of AI tools to help bring this blocker down. For instance, I have a business right now, an 11 entity manufacturer, and they engaged us to help them with the data. They do have technical resources, but they looked at their system and they said, you know what, this is going to be such a high volume that yes, we need your help. Why don't you come in, help us manage the data, and let's try to keep this project on path. That 11 entity manufacturer that's globally distributed is now on path to go live within the next week, and it would be a 6-month implementation. So a pretty rapid rollout for a business of that size. All because they've really committed to proper data management processes, and saw that there was an opportunity to manage this alongside the implementation via us as their partner, with themselves still contributing and validating. And it's really helped with their with their implementation success. So, Nikhil, I'm going to hand it over to yourself so you can go through the explore phase. I know you have some good stories here to tell, so go for it.
Yeah. Yeah, and for the team, I guess we'll walk through some of the explore tasks and what the explore phase typically would mean for your organization. So, Will, if we can go to the next slide here, the explore task, the explore phase is typically, the consulting team from either VistaView side will come down to your business and sit with your key users and start educating the users through a show and tell series of events, right? So we will go through things like your sales and your manufacturing processes, and we will define this is what SAP over their 50 and 60 years in experience in the industry will define as a best practice for these particular scenarios. And we would work with your project teams to understand this is how the best practice works. Is this in alignment with your business processes today? Are there gaps? And understanding what those gaps are and calling them out for the project team to rectify. So that's one of the main key test steps that we're doing within this phase, is the fit to standard workshops. We're also identifying, what does your organization look like today? How does that need to be built into an org structure? But also, how does it get built in a scalable way so it can support your organization's growth over the next 10 to 15 years as you're in the system? Like I mentioned before, as we're going through these scenarios, we're going to be identifying things that might be gaps within your business today. Maybe you are doing something that's outside of the standard. So this is where we would have to identify, are these things go live critical? Are they requirements of the business that you cannot function without, your secret sauce? If the answer is yes, then we're working with you on how do we build a solution to fit your needs that also doesn't make you a risk to post-upgrade failures. So we'll get into that in a future slide here. But that's essentially where we start going through those lists, and we try to identify with the business what's critical, what's something that we can put into our backlog and start talking to you after we go live. And then last but not least, the designing of the work streams. And we're just working again with each of these work streams to make sure that we're in alignment. So for lessons learned, what I've seen in my experience is the most important thing, if you guys can take away from this, is user involvement in these workshops. The more user involvement we get from the key users, the more successful the projects become. I've worked on projects where we've had incredible user involvement from day one in the workshops. They were engaged. They were working in the starter system, which is a sample demo system loaded with best practice data for your users to kind of get in day one to start leveraging how SAP S/4HANA or Cloud ERP works. So projects that had that level of involvement were incredibly successful. I've also worked on projects where, hey, everything's being filtered through the IT team. And when things get filtered through the IT team, the business teams aren't as aligned as they need to be. And then you start to see some of those issues later on in the project. So if there's anything that we can take away from this, a lesson learned would be, again, importance of the users and their enablement within the Fit to Standard workshops. I've got here on the screen things as well, like tools. So again, building familiarity in the starter system and working with SAP's Cloud ALM tool, which is more of a project management tool, task tracking to keep everyone in alignment. And then, just an example of what happens in these explore phases, because Will brought up a very good scenario in his Discover where he was talking about, hey, we got into a project that we could have identified something earlier on, and it could have de-risked the project. This is just the beauty of Activate, is there are a few stage gates for us to capture items like that could be misses from either the business didn't consider it or maybe the user involvement wasn't there. Because I had a particular customer who was in this phase and they had never considered PO automations anywhere on their radar. But after sitting with our key users, we identified, hey, but one key user is responsible for creating 80 purchase orders a day. And that's a large tax on their time. So through those types of workshops, we were able to identify opportunities to create automations. We're using AI, using bots to help take that 80 purchase order workload off of their plate and giving them time back in the day to be working on value add activities. So again, this is just another area, another stage gate where we can also help capture requirements for the business that might have been missed in the previous two phases before we move on with the building of the system and starting to execute.
All right, thank you, Nikhil. Nikhil, were you going to speak to Realize as well?
Yeah, so I can speak to the Realize phase. So if we come over into the next slide. So the Realize phase, so in the Explore phase, we talked about the design. We're understanding what's in scope, how we're going to plan for it, what's going to be, critical for the business. And then the Realize phase is now the execution of those plans. So what we can see here is this is where we're starting to move into configuration in your development tenant. So for those who don't know, Cloud ERP comes with 3 tenants. It comes with a development tenant, a test tenant, and a production tenant. So this is where all of those configuration activities would begin, where we start to build this system up to meet the business needs based on our Explore activities. We start to run mock loads where we start putting data into your systems that are coming from your legacy systems. So Will talked about some accelerators we have there in Business One and in ByDesign to quickly get data out of those legacy systems and into Cloud ERP. And then after everything's, and tested end to end, we start handing it over to your users for training and testing so they can start getting their hands on not only a system that they've already been enabling on, but now it's more specific to their business requirements with their business data. And then last but not least, we're building and rehearsing for cutover, right? We're making sure we have all of our open data ready. We're practicing it and we're trying to get it into our test systems. So, what I would call out as a major lesson learned here, again, I think you guys might see a theme in what I call out is again going to be user enablement. So, the sooner the teams are in the systems, so whether that's in the starter system during the explore phase, just to get an understanding of how Cloud ERP operates, or in this case, in the realize phase, getting your teams acclimated and testing early and often. What we tend to see is, as you get closer and closer to that go live date, users start to get cold feet. And that cold feet is not due to the system not giving them what they need. It's typically just due to the standard change management, right? You're going from screen A to screen B. You're saying, now it was called a purchase request. It's now called a requisition. So there's some terminology changes, and all of these things are typically mitigated with some help with just having additional reps in the system. So that's something that I would call out early and often is the more you're in this system and playing with it, the more comfortable your users will be. And then when we talk about things like the tools, so the realize phase, there's a lot of tools that SAP offers that are out of the box and free for you to use. But one of the two tools that I will call out in that list is there's a post-upgrade testing tool and a test automation tool. So I talked previously about if we're following fit to standard, if we're following fit to standard and trying to build things in a clean core way, you're now in a cloud system that twice a year it's getting upgrades for new functionality. And if you're staying closer to that standard line, then when these upgrades happen, there's a whole lot less onus on the business to make sure that, hey, do I need to go and test the sales order function to make sure nothing is broken and it's going to cause problems for my business? But those two tools, the post-upgrade testing and the test automation tool, are automated tools that will help you build use cases and automatically test your systems for you to reduce that user overhead in managing your systems in an ongoing environment. So, Will, if we can go to the deploy phase.
Deploy. I will take it back over here, Nikhil. Okay, so phase 5, deploy. So deploy to me, it says it means cutover, right? That's what I think of cutover. There's an abundance of topics that occur within deploy, but in my opinion, it's right. Cutover, go live. Cutover is the effort. Go live is the result. So when we walk through our deploy phase, we have our go no go readiness meeting, which is just us stating, do we feel comfortable? Are we ready? Is our data complete as we know it? That sort of thing. We execute our cutover, we go live, and we have hypercare, generally through the first 2 weeks, depending on the size of the project. But I'm going to go into lessons learned here because I feel that this is probably the culmination of the project. I think it's the most stressful area of the implementation, right? This is where you see all of the work that you have completed in the prior months coming to a point. So the reason I say it means cutover to me is, we look at all these other items as very important, but the cutover is really the effort that comes alongside deploy. And when I say, I like to fixate on cutover, it's because when you look through many of these methodologies, various project management methodologies, whatever they are, they try to box cutover into the few weeks prior. But I really believe it starts day one, right? It starts with the initial discussions around the design of your system. It starts with, the first time someone brings up, well, hey, I need to create this additional field, or hey, I need to manipulate this piece of data that I extracted, which I'm going to need to do again before we bring the data into the system, right? So, and then it also might be physical changes. I had an implementation many years ago, and this is applicable to any ERP implementation where we tracked everything through the cutover. We had a running list months in advance that was routinely updated. So by the time we got to the actual few weeks prior to cutover, we were ready to go, right? We knew what we were actioning. We had everything sequenced. We had everyone assigned, the times, all of that. We cut over and we came in the day of go live. And the customer said, hey, we have everything in the new bins, we have the codes defined properly, but how do we find the items? Because we changed some of our coding, right? So one of the things that wasn't tracked was the actual physical act of manipulating the labels within the warehouse. So it caused a major hangup for us. We came to the table, we worked through the weekend, we worked with the customer to update, via reference fields, all of these codes so all the inventory could be found. But that's why I say, start cutover planning as early as can be, because it impacts almost every person at the business, and it's in a time boxed manner, right? So it can get very confusing, it can get very stressful, and the more organized you are, the more efficiently you're going to cut over, and you're going to have a great go live because of that. So, lessons learned, right? Cut over early as possible, and just make that a running list. It's not a one-time task that should occur, 2 weeks before cut over, before go live. And if you're lucky and you're efficient enough, you get to sleep Sunday night before go live, which, makes everyone feel refreshed when they come in and ready for the day. So, Nikhil, I'm going to hand it over back to yourself to discuss and run.
Yeah. So Will's kind of walked us through the deploy phase. You guys went through all of the activities for cutover. You got your system live. You went through your hypercare period. The system's now stable. So now the run phase is where SAP kind of looks at this as an ongoing phase, right? You will always be in a run phase. So what we would say is the most important tasks in the run phase will be obviously within the organization. You need to start giving it some thought about how am I going to tier my internal support model to support these systems. So throughout the implementation, you've identified key users in each area of the business that you find are not only change agents, but also leaders in their space where individuals can go to whenever they have issues. So a tiered support model, your first line of defense internally for all things, hey, help in the system, who do I go to, is going to be a very important piece to your success on Cloud ERP moving forward. And then just have, guidance and have peace knowing that wherever the business can't support, whether that might be development, analytics, or even just deeper knowledge questions, that's what you are here as a partner here to support you in your ongoing efforts in Cloud ERP. So a support model is a very, very important task to focus on. The regression testing, I talked about that previously, right? Making sure that we have spent the time to build out these regression tests in these automated tools. These are investments, right? So any effort you put in the front end, it's going to pay dividends later on for your system. So you won't have users having to manually test things. You won't have to, worry about things breaking and not having that heads up before an upgrade. So I would say that's a very important piece. And then just like I mentioned before, if we're saying to clean core, if we're following fit to standard and we're developing custom solutions that meet clean core principles, then it's also just going to make that testing a lot less strenuous on the business. And then last but not least, planning for phase 2, phase 3 work, right? Go live is just the start of your business transformation. As we start talking through some more of the solutions that SAP's Business Suite will offer you, there's going to be additional opportunities for your business to continue to grow. So if we talk about lessons learned, where I would say the most important piece in this will be, it's the governance. How are you going to support this system post go live? I've seen customers who come into it with a very, very strict approach where, hey, everything's got to go into each line of business lead. So your sales leader, your manufacturing leader, and if they can't figure that issue out, then they forward it on to VistaView for assistance and resolution. I've seen some businesses come in there and just say, we want anyone in our business to just be able to raise tickets with VistaView. Both of those approaches work. It's just really open to more about what is your appetite for internal governance around a particular system. So in this case, Cloud ERP. So that's one important lesson. The second that I can't stress enough is the enterprise architecture review. So arguably, this could have also been in our discover phase, but we've decided to put it here in run because as you go through a migration project, it's a very it's a very long process, right? You're starting from software selection to understanding requirements and then implementing those requirements. And everyone knows an ERP implementation can sometimes be a stressful environment. When we get into enterprise architecture reviews towards the end of the project, it's good to take a step back and take a look at what is Cloud ERP offering my business now that I didn't consider in the beginning of this project? What are things that I can roll away from a technical debt perspective, because now Cloud ERP can manage that, or maybe the SAP product stack. So to give you guys some examples of where I've seen this actually coming into play is I've had two particular examples in the last 60 days where a customer goes live and they realize, hey, SAP has offered me SAP Sales Cloud, which is their CRM tool, as part of my licenses with public cloud. So what that means to me as a business is I can roll away my $100,000 roughly ACV contract that I'm paying for in HubSpot and start leveraging a tool that is paid for by my S4 licenses. So that was something where they were able to bring back some IT spend to reallocate any elsewhere in the business. And then another scenario was a customer who actually just went live. And during that process, they identified, hey, we have a very, very custom commissions model to pay out our commissions to any of our distributors. What they were able to do was they were able to actually adopt that using the standard commissions processes within public cloud. What that allowed them to do was roll away a completely custom solution that they were having to pay someone in particular to maintain on a monthly basis, and just now bring it into a standard standard functionality within Cloud ERP. So that was them being able to remove technical debt from their own IT teams and bringing into a more of a standard feature. So I think these two, governance and enterprise architecture review, are two clear lessons learned that businesses should spend some time focusing on in the run phase. How do I support the system long term? And then what does this system offer me that I can remove additional technical debt within my infrastructure?
All right.
And I think,
Thank you, Nikhil.
yeah, of course.
And so that brings us to 11:30, 11:32 a.m. Eastern. We're 2 minutes over, but just as a recap, so we just isolated some items that we felt strongly about as an organization that really would help any customer in their migration journey. So of these 5 items, participate in discovery. It really helps you avoid any surprises through the implementation. Participation is key. Have your SMEs understand what the fit to standard process is, right? What is the system that we're adopting? How is it going to impact our business? And how do we need to structure ourselves for change? Because change is inevitable when you look at ERP systems. Start cutover planning early as you can. Make sure you record all of those steps in sequence and assignees. It'll make your life easier and less stressful on the back end of the project. Adopt the tools that SAP provides. SAP has poured a lot of time and effort and money into creating tools that are free for you to use to facilitate management of your system. If you adopt these tools, you will have nothing but success with them. And follow the fit to standard. The whole Cloud ERP public cloud system is set up as a fit to standard system. The more you adopt the standard, the more efficiently your organization is going to run, the more easily you'll be able to support your organization and we'll be able to support you. And you will just have a significant level of success with the standard versus any form of customization. So I'm going to hand it over to Jenny Tam here, and she's going to, speak to next steps.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Will. Thank you, Nikhil. My name is Jenny Tam, part of the VistaView team here, and we appreciate all your time on this webinar. And the ask that we have is for you, number one is just quick next steps. Number one, fill in our readiness checklist. It gives you a sense of where you're at, where things are, a bit of a health check when it comes to your organization, if you're thinking about embarking on this journey. Number two, love to have you engage in us in an assessment. We would love to have that one-on-one interaction with you to really get to know you, get to know your organization and the business problems that you're running into. to and to be top of mind for that. And then last but not least is to really engage with us to schedule an on-site discovery. VistaView loves the idea of working with you one-on-one, working face-to-face, and having that intimacy of really getting to know your business and being an extension of your organization. So please feel free to reach out and schedule an on-site discovery with us. So that is our ask of you today. Thank you. Now, without further ado, I'd like to ask the audience if there are any questions that you might have. Feel free to bring yourself off mute or type your questions into the chat. And we're all ears for you to answer any questions that might be top of mind. Please go right ahead. Nothing I can see at this point in time. Oh, I do see a hand. Go right ahead, Ryan.
Yeah, hello guys. Thank you for sharing all the things. I just had a quick question. Will, I know you mentioned that for the B1 and ByD migration, it's better to start planning as soon as possible, but is there an optimal lead time required when it comes to planning for B1 or ByD migration?
So I would say as soon as you start thinking about an ERP migration, you should start planning and preparing internally, right? These implementations, as you know, anyone who's been through one, which should be everyone on this call, they can be disruptive to your business in the sense of you are assigning out additional tasks to your user base, your employee base, right? So they need to be able to make time alongside their day job to also focus on these implementation items. So if you can start having data cleansed in advance, you can start having business process mapping done in advance. You can identify, subject matter experts and project champions. These are all things that can be done before you even engage your partner. And you just come in equipped to move forward and move through that project quickly. Because once you have that team structured, and if you bring them into that discovery, I promise you they are going to be more engaged throughout the duration of the project and just more beneficial to the design of the implementation, versus just pulling people in independently and maybe having, a single person or two try to manage this implementation in a silo. This is a full business effort when you shift these systems. So yeah, I would say as soon as you start thinking about the migration, you can really start preparing and planning for it.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much, Ryan. Back to the audience. Any questions from the audience? Feel free to put up your virtual hand or type your question in the chat. We do have a question in the chat. Thank you very much, Gujan. So the question from the chat is, for the SME industry, ticket size is a big issue. As you know, B1 and ByDesign for SMB or small and medium business and public cloud for large scale, and how much would be roughly the budget goes up to compare to SAP B1 and ByDesign 1x, 2x, or 10x, then how to justify that bit for a client?
Great question. Great question. I think our sales team would most appropriately be able to handle pricing. However, I will say this. Pricing is directly contingent to, the current state of your existing system and how willing you are to adopt the fit to standard processes within the public cloud ERP. And by that, I mean, ByDesign, if you have 25 applications that have been developed that you're leveraging alongside the ERP itself, that's going to directly increase your implementation costs. Business One was a product that was almost built to be modified for better or for worse. For many years, that was the process around ERP, right? And then we started to shift to kind of best of breed adoption for external software. But what that's done is it's put some customers in Business One in a position where, we need to go in and we do this for all of our customers. We do scope mapping, right? We take the existing state of your current system and map it to the public cloud system scope IDs. But anything that falls outside of that and becomes a gap area, that's what we see the largest impact to cost, right? So I would say it's very much dependent on the complexities of your existing system and how well your business aligns to the fit to standard process for the public cloud ERP.
Perfect. Thank you very much. Gujan, does that answer your question? All right. Part B of the question. On average, Will, how much increase according to your overall experience?
So if I'm looking at, and I'm going to use bare bones, bare bones Business One or bare bones ByDesign implementation, you might be looking at, in comparison, maybe a 25 to 30% increase on an SAP Business One implementation in comparison to a vanilla fit to standard public cloud implementation. And this is a limited scope, being finance, sales, procurement, and really it would probably be limited to that: finance, sales, and procurement. No warehouse management, anything like that. You'd be looking at probably a 20 to 30% increase in services, just because of there's a lot more that needs to be configured up front in the public cloud system. I think on the back end, you're also eliminating a lot of cost around upgrades, though. So really, when you look at total cost of ownership spanned out, one of the major differences with the ByD and B1 systems are where I think you're paying up front for more services, you're eliminating the upgrades on the back end, because the upgrades are rolling. They come out every February and August. So for instance, on a B1 system, it might be 100 hours for an upgrade. For S4, that's a self-serve upgrade that you're able to roll out independently, and you might not even need to speak to us about it. So, the implementation cost, I would say, exceeds that of your ByD and B1. I wouldn't say it's a 10x. Definitely would not say 10x, but it's very hard to gauge, because you need to have some knowledge of the current state of complexity within your existing environment. So it's tough for me to throw a number out.
No worries at all. Awesome. Do have a question coming back to you here, Nikhil and Will. One of the questions is, what is VistaView doing to make training easier? Right. You talk a little bit about getting prepared and helping with transition participation. Could you elaborate a little bit more in detail relating to the testing process?
Do you want me to take this one, Will?
Yeah, go ahead, Nikhil.
Yeah. So training is always an interesting topic, because I think there's a lot of different mediums where people consume information and process it differently, right? So what we typically do in our train the trainer approach is we will have sessions where we are hopping on a Teams call, or we are coming to your site in person and walking the users through all of the activities that they would have to do in their day-to-day jobs. That would be recorded. So they would have a recording for those who like to enjoy, going through the recordings and working side by side. We also are creating SOPs to mimic those same types of steps as a PDF guide that we hand over. So the users are getting face-to-face time with our resources, and trying to help clear them on any stucks that they might have. They're getting recordings of those sessions, and they're also getting SOPs of those standard test scripts. And again, this is going back to, if we stick to standard, what you also will have available to you is within Cloud ERP, there's going to be two main features that are going to enable your users. There's going to be Joule, which is their new AI, their AI agent within Cloud ERP, where you can use Joule to prompt, hey, how do I enter a purchase order? How do I enter a sales order? What does this field mean? A lot of that content will be given back to you via the AI, which is looking at a lot of the SAP help documentation. So the closer you stick to standard, the more relevant that information to your user base will be, as well as SAP's done a really good job of embedding help in the tool nowadays. So now the users can click the help button at the top right, and it's also going to guide them through the screen that they're on and what all of the key objects and what they pertain to. So there's a few different ways we technically skin that cat. Again, it's on-site training and FaceTime. It's going to be recorded sessions for the key users to revert back to. There's going to be guided SOPs that we build out throughout the project. And then in addition to that, you have the SAP help documentation library and Joule to facilitate your users onboarding.
Perfect. That sounds amazing. And one last question that we do have in the chat here, it's coming from Nuruddin. In your experience in doing this, which business processes require the most redesign, aka in the legacy ERP systems, versus a simple implementation in SAP Cloud ERP?
It's a good question. I've seen, from my experience, I've seen where business processes would require some redesign would be things that are typically bespoke, right? Things that were being done outside of the system that are now coming inside the system for standardization. That's where we end up seeing a lot of that redesign, because it's not necessarily redesign, I guess. It's more so you're now having to do a lot more change management and helping the business understand, something that was customized now needs to follow the standard approach and trying to fill the gaps of where that particular bespoke, application was meeting the business needs. I think that's typically where you see the most of that type of work.
Yeah, I would almost say it's not so much a redesign. In many instances, it's dismantling of the existing solution, because we've had implementations that we've gone through where we've taken a highly modified customer and been able to dismantle what they have and put them into the standard, and the standard has covered what they currently have in place. So it's not that we're trying to manipulate the new system to fit what they have. We're actually able to eliminate the customizations they have and fit it into the new system. But good question.
And Will, we got one more question before we hand out here. So Alex has asked, what are some key benefits Cloud ERP offers that does not exist in Business One?
I would say right off the bat, one of the largest ones, intercompany. Anyone who has intercompany, multi-entity intercompany, Business One is notoriously poor at managing intercompany. There are some add-ons out there, but they're a bit difficult to leverage. Also, quality control. So it has a native quality control process within the WMS. There is also a true WM without an add-on. So there is a scanning solution native to the product that doesn't have that you don't need an add-on for, and that has the quality control within it. You also have native, I think this is the biggest one, native AI capabilities that are just being expanded further and further. So there's quite a bit. I mean, to put it in perspective, some of the transformations we've completed for Business One customers, I have, if it's wholesale distribution, I have not seen a customer yet who's required a modification, right? So they've, outside of forms and reports and small manipulations of that nature, they have not required a large scale modification, because the product fits that wholesale distribution market as it relates to Business One so well. So we've spent a lifetime developing a resolved WMS solution, and it almost perfectly fits into what public cloud offers natively.
And I would also say that the ByDesign customers, same boat. A lot of the custom applications, the custom SDK solutions they built into ByDesign have been removed entirely, moving into Cloud ERP with standard functionality. So it also de-risks the business from an upgrade and custom solution perspective as well.
Amazing. Thank you very much. And last but not least, Gujan, I do see your hand up. Did we address your question in the chat, or do you have another one? Please feel free to come off mute.
I think everyone is muted by the, I don't think you can come off mute in here.
Oh, no problem. Thank you very much, Gujan. We've answered your questions. Perfect. And that brings our session to a bit of a close. Thank you very much, everybody. We appreciate all your time. And once again, please feel free, if you have any questions that come about, please feel free to reach out, and we're here to help you out from the VistaView team.
Thank you, everyone. Appreciate the time.